Hello, hello. Did you know that actually tariffs can hurt growth and innovation? I hope you did. If not, then maybe I'll explain why. And trust me, I've got no hidden agenda here behind this. It's simply that I've studied economics, been a big fan, and it really hurts from that perspective when I see certain things happening. And there's so much buzz around tariffs. I thought it's the right time to speak about it, right? So, let's say, what if I told you that the policy meant to protect your country or your country's economy is actually making you poorer? So today we're diving into tariffs and why economists across the political spectrum agree they're usually a bad idea. We look at real examples from India and Europe to see how protection actually kills competition and innovation. So what are tariffs? First, let's get something clear, right? A tariff is essentially a tax on imported goods. When a company wants to bring a product into your country, they have to pay this extra fee to the government. The idea sounds good on paper and makes foreign goods more expensive, so people buy domestic products instead. And that's fantastic, right? We promote local production. This protects local jobs and industries. But here's the problem. Economics isn't that simple. So this is a competition problem primarily. The fundamental issue is tariffs eliminate competition. And competition is the driving force behind everything we love about market economies. Better quality, lower prices, and constant innovation. Actually, think about yourself when you're a student. If you had no competition, do you think you'd have done so well? Or whatever you've done well in your life, right? So, or another way to think about it is if you're a business owner and the government guarantees that your foreign competitors will always be more expensive, what's your incentive to improve? Why spend money on research and development? And why worry about customer service? You're protected. You're safe. You have a moat. And this is what economists call rent-seeking behavior. When businesses focus on getting government protection instead of actually serving customers better. So let me give you a case study about India. So India gives us a perfect real world experiment from 1947, that is why India got its independence, to 1991. India had sky high tariffs and import restrictions under what was called the licensed art system. And this is not a very hotly debated topic in India because everybody is aware of it and we were taught. So the results were not so good. In economics, from the economist perspective, they were devastating. So GDP growth averaged on 3 to 4% per year. So slow, it was just really not good. Indian cars were notoriously unreliable. The ambassador car barely changed for decades. I remember even when I was really young, ambassador was a car which was used. And consumer goods were expensive and low quality. Innovation stagnated. And it does not mean that Indians were not that smart or they did not want better quality. But structures around do prohibit these things. So then 1991 happened. India began reducing tariffs and opening up the foreign competition. In fact, very commonly in India, it's called LPG. So liberalization, privatization, globalization. And the transformation was remarkable. GDP growth jumped from 6 to 8% annually. Indian companies like Infosys, TCS, Wipro became global leaders. The auto industry exploded. Tata Motors went from making basic cars to acquiring Jaguar Land Rover, right? Consumer choice expanded dramatically. So, what's the key insight here? Indian companies didn't disappear when protection ended. They got better. They had to. Now, let's look at the European lessons, right? Europe offers another fascinating case. Within the European Union, there are virtually no tariffs between member countries. This created intense competition. And the results. German cars compete directly with Italian, French, and Swedish cars. This internal competition made European brands globally competitive. BMW, Mercedes, Volkswagen, Ferrari, these brands succeeded because they faced tough competition at home. But here's a contrast. The EU still protects some industries with external tariffs, especially agriculture. European consumers pay significantly more for food than they need to. And European farms are often less efficient than those in countries like New Zealand or Brazil. So, what the experts say? Now, you might think this is just one perspective, but economists across the political spectrum agree on this issue. I promise. Adam Smith, the father of modern economics, warned about this back in 1776. I'm not even talking like recently, like a long time back. And not everything which was said long time back is relevant today, but this is. And so Adam Smith in 1776, when he published The Wealth of Nations, he showed how protection creates inefficiency and hurts consumers. David Ricardo proved mathematically that countries benefited from trade even when countries better producing everything. And his theory of comparative advantage is still taught in every economics course today. I hated the derivation that I had to learn, but it's a fact. Like, we still are taught that. Even recent time, Milton Friedman, the free market champion, right, called tariffs taxation without representation because they tax consumers to benefit politically connected industries. And I don't want that, right? But maybe because I think from the economics perspective, right? I know that most of the governments don't want something wrong for the country. They actually want to protect us. So there's always a conflict of interest. Now talking about that, like even Paul Krugman, a Nobel Prize winner who's generally left-leaning, has consistently opposed most tariffs, calling them a form of regressive taxation that hurts poor the most, right? The consensus is extremely remarkable from across, countries. From conservative Chicago school economists to liberal Keynesians, they agree that tariffs usually make countries poor. And they're the innovation killer. Now let's talk about innovation. The smartphone industry shows us what happens with global competition, constant improvement, falling prices, amazing new features every year. Now contrast that with industries that have been protected by tariffs. They tend to stagnate. Take the US steel industry. Decades of protection led to outdated technology and high costs. Meanwhile, countries like South Korea developed cutting-edge steel production. So the pattern is clear. Protection breeds complacency. Competition breeds excellence. Now, let's talk about the consumer cost because that's where I'm coming from. So here's the bottom line for basically people like us, regular people. Tariffs are a tax you pay every time you shop. When tariffs make foreign washing machine more expensive, domestic manufacturers can raise their prices too because they no longer need to compete so hard. You end up paying more for both imported and domestic products. And studies have consistently shown that tariffs cost consumers far more than their domestic workers. It's essentially taking money from millions of consumers to protect thousands of jobs, and often not even effectively. True story. Now, since I love things which can reveal the truth, I will talk about prediction markets or the wisdom of crowds here. So, here's something fascinating. I hope you find this fascinating. Prediction markets can actually help understand how well people grasp these economic concepts. What are prediction markets? They're platforms where people bet or trade real money on future events. Everything from elections to economic outcomes. Now, here's the key insight. When there are markets on questions like, will tariffs on steel increase consumer prices? Or will country X's new trade barriers hurt the economic growth? For betting patterns reveal something important about public understanding. For example, if a market shows 70% probability that tariff will hurt consumers, but polls show 60% public support for tariffs, that's a knowledge gap. People with real money at stake tend to research the issue more carefully than casual poll respondents. Markets that consistently price tariff policies as economically harmful suggest that people who study the issue more carefully reach similar conclusions to economists. The pattern we see, the more someone understands economics, reflected in accurate market predictions, right? the less likely they are to support tariffs. It's like real-time test of economic literacy. Now there are common arguments about this. Tariff supporter makes some valid sounding arguments. We need to protect domestic jobs. But protection often preserves inefficient jobs while preventing the creation of more productive ones. India's liberalization initially displaced some workers, it's a fact, but created millions of better paying jobs in new industries. National security requires domestic production. This can be true for truly critical goods, but it's often used as an excuse to protect politically connected industries that have nothing to do with security. Other countries cheat, so we need tariffs. Two wrongs don't make a right. If another country wants to subsidize cheap goods for you, why punish your own consumers, your own citizens by taxing those goods? So I hope you understand. The evidence is overwhelming. Countries that embrace competition through lower tariffs tend to grow faster, innovate more, and provide better life for the citizens. From Adam Smith to modern Nobel Prize winners, economists agree. I promise you. From India's transformation to Europe's success, history shows the pattern. Even prediction markets, where people put money behind their beliefs, consistently price protectionist policies as economically harmful. Tariffs might protect specific industries in the short run, but make overall economy weaker, less innovative, and less competitive globally. So the next time you hear someone promising to protect you with tariffs, remember, the best protection for consumers and workers comes from competition, innovation, and the freedom to choose. However, that being said, I come from one perspective that might not be correct, right? But I am simply sharing my point of view from an economic perspective, but that's one perspective. There could be several others. And so, tell me, what do you think? Have you seen examples of how competition improved products in your life? And if you're interested in prediction markets, I'll put some markets out there for you guys to be able to see whether this actually works in reality or not. Thank you.